Hi guys, welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be looking at the comparison between the Canon R7 and the Canon R6 and which one should you buy. So what we're going to do is what we usually do, we'll go through the specs of both cameras, we'll compare the bodies and see what's different between the two, and then what we'll do is we'll look at some comparison photos that I've taken in similar conditions between the R7 and the R6 and see if we can see any differences there. And then what I'll do is I'll do my overview of which one I think is best and which one I think you should buy. So we'll crack on with that right now. So in the UK the R7 is now $1449. It was $1349, so it's gone up by £100 unfortunately in the past year, which is a bit of a shame, but that's what we're looking at for the retail price of the R7. And the R6 in the UK is between $18.99 and $17.99 in places like MPB. Okay, so here we have the R7 on this side, R6 on this side. For the untrained eye they look fairly similar in shape and size, but actually the R7 is ever so slightly bigger even without the battery grip, because it's got that full magnesium body underneath, gives it a bit better weather sealing. The main differences obviously between the two cameras are in the sensor. So you have a gigantic full frame sensor in the R6 at 20 megapixels, and you have a crop sensor 32.5 megapixel sensor, which doesn't even fill up the circle, it's so small in there, but super powerful sensor nonetheless. Shutter speed wise, you've got 15 frames a second mechanical in the R7, you've got 12 mechanical in the R6, you've got 30 electric on here, and you've only got 20 on the R6. What I have seen and what I have talked about before is the mechanical 12 on here on a adapted lens really struggles with the focusing, and you get a lot of shutter blackout compared to the 15 megapixel frames a second on mechanical on this camera here, which you don't get that much blackout at all, and it focuses very true. So the focusing on mechanical wise is incredibly good on this R7, so there shouldn't be any problems there. I'm shooting primarily on electric on the R6. Another difference as well on the electronic shutter between the two, the R7 does make a noise, an audible noise that you can turn off, but so you know you're taking the shots. The R6 does not have that, so sometimes I'm pressing that shutter and I actually don't realise I am, apart from a flashing on the corner, which is always very noticeable on the R6. We go to the back of the cameras here, so we go like that. Both cameras have the flip display on there, which you can put vary angle, which is really great. Both touchscreen as well, so you can press your focus points from there. One thing I have noticed when I'm trying to sort of adjust settings and stuff on the back screen is if you look at the position of the sensors, which turn the screen off when you put your eye to the viewfinder, on the R7 it's off to the right, on the R6 it's down below. So when you press that menu button, if you press from above like this, it will cover that sensor and turn the screen off, which is quite frustrating. On the R7 you're over here and the sensor's over there and it doesn't turn it off, so you can do that without a problem, which is really nice. Both cameras themselves use the same memory card types, so both have dual extreme SD cards in them. So I use the SanDisk Pro 300 megabytes per second in my ones, and I shoot redundant in RAW as well, and I don't have too much issue with buffer on the R6. It's got like a 64 buffer on dual recording RAW. If you're shooting on the R7 you have 28 if you're shooting redundant RAW, which if you're shooting in electric mode you get a second of shots and you're done. So that's something to be aware of. If you're shooting RAW and redundant, you are not going to have a massive buffer. You need to work around that and have the fastest cars possible to recoup that buffer when you use it up. So that's something to definitely think about for sure. Overall though, they both have IBIS in them, so if you are using a RF lens you do get that IBIS support on there. That isn't supported if you are using a adapted lens. You have to rely on the lens AF focusing system itself, which personally I've never had a problem of, but overall, so you've got a different dial system on the top here where you've got the dial up here. What I have found is when I'm shooting sometimes on the R6, I can knock the ISO by accident. On here, you would use the dial here, and so it's a little bit harder to knock the ISO. But when you're going to shoot, or when you click in your sort of focus sides here, your focus points, because I've got eye tracking DSLR mode, I call it, where it's just a center box, and then recentering the box is my buttons up here. And up here I've got eye tracking and then just center focus point. So when you're going between these, you can knock that switch. I've got quite big hands, and I can change the ISO by accident, but its placement is actually quite nice. You can change the ISO super quickly back. It's just when you look through that viewfinder, you notice, oh, everything's a bit darker because it tends to go to a lower mode. So apart from that though, with the addition of the grip on the R6 makes a huge difference. Obviously I've got a video on making a grip for the R7. I'm still working on wiring up. A lot of you have asked about that. I'm not quite ready with it yet, but that will be coming in the future. But just having a native grip that has all the functions that you come to use up here. Someone was complaining about the position of the joystick being different here than it is here. I've not found an issue with it personally, but that's not saying it would be an issue for some sort of hand sizes. Again, I've got quite big hands, so I can reach quite easily down with my thumb. If you've got smaller thumbs, maybe you couldn't reach that potentially where it is as easy as it is up here. But overall, so in the top as well, that's where the other differences really are. You've got the electronic hot shoe, so you can plug in sort of Canon native devices and it'll power off the battery itself. You don't have that on the R6. You have the same mode dial sort of functions up here. You have your record in a similar place. You got a lock here instead of ISO, and you say you don't have this button, and the on-off button is a integrated video on-off button rather than a on-off button, and you have your video mode up on the dial. But overall, both excellent cameras and very well made in my opinion on both fronts. So let's look at some of the photos you get between these two cameras, and then we'll go from there. So the first photo we're going to look at here is on the R7. This is of one of the chimps at Culture Zoo using eye tracking, so it's locked on that right eye. This is on the 300mm f2.8. So you can see the left eye is slightly out of focus just because of that depth of field of it not facing me 100%. But the detail you get is actually super nice still. It's 30 megapixels, so you expect it to be pretty good. But nice details in the hair, and then a nice little blur out on the sides there. Next photo is from the R6, the same chimp again with eye focusing on. A little bit lower light as well, so you can see the photo is actually slightly darker, but the quality of the photo itself is still nice and sharp and good high quality. Again, same lens, 300mm 2.8, so you can see the background's blurred out and the foreground slightly as well, just to the way the chimp is lying on there, but still nice quality photo and no complaints there. Next one is of a sun bear on the R7. This is low light, so you can see it's ever so slightly noisy on the R7 here, especially in the paw and bits around the nose and stuff. A little bit noisy, but this is eye tracking again. It's focused on the eye where you'd expect it to be, so really good there. Just a little bit noisy just because of the low light aspect of the photo. Next photo is of the R6 of the sun bear. As you can see, eye focusing perfect. There's not as much noise in the photo, so the photo itself just looks a little bit cleaner, and that's just because of the lighting conditions. It shows you the difference between a full frame sensor and a crop sensor in low light. Perfect example of what the difference is from these two photos. Final photos we're going to look at are of two iguanas. This is on the R7, so eye tracking again, nice and in focus, nice and sharp where it needs to be. It's a little bit noisy still because this is like unnatural light, so it's a little bit darker, but still a very usable image from the R7 here. This is the final image, so a different iguana but still in the same lighting conditions, and you can see there's a little bit more colour coming from the photo. Obviously the iguana itself is a little bit brighter in colour, but the greys and stuff just look a little bit nicer. Eye tracking perfect, exactly where you want it to be, super sharp, and then no noise at all really from this photo, which is absolutely great from the R6 here. So we look through both of the photos you can get from each of these cameras here. Obviously I personally think you can get a slightly better photo, especially in low light because of the higher ISO capability of the R6, but you do get that greater reach from the R7 just being a crop sensor camera. So there is a bit of give and take there. What do you need the camera for? If you're a bird photographer or wildlife photographer, you're taking things far away and you don't have a prime lens like a 600mm or an 800mm or something like that, and you want to get that extra reach for free, probably end up going with the R7. It is a little bit cheaper, especially being new as well, so you got your full warranty with the camera. If you just want like more pixel quality, you can crop in better low light capability, the addition of a battery grip without having to make your own, then go with the R6. I think I've been using the R6 now for a couple of months, it being slightly better weather sealed for me, me having the prime lenses, so I don't necessarily need the extra reach from a crop sensor. I just very much prefer the feel. It's a little bit bigger as a body, which might be a positive for you, might be a negative. So if you want a slightly smaller body, go with the R7. But if you want a slightly chunkier body and say you want that battery grip, which for me is super important for what I use and take photos with, all day long I'm picking up the R6, which is why I got one. I still have the R7. This is actually going to be going to my dad, and he's going to be using the R7. Here's his secondary from his 7D Mark II. So we're going to see what photos he can get in comparison to what he's used to getting with the 7D, and I'm going to be using this alongside the 1DX Mark II, and seeing what photos in comparison I can get compared to what I know I can get from that 1DX Mark II. Let me know in the comments which one you would go for and which one have you potentially gone for. Obviously, even second hand, these are slightly more money than the R7, but you know, if you're used to full frame and you want that low light capability, you've got to go with it really. Over the R7, it's so much better in low light, and the pitch quality being that full frame sensor, just second to none. It's lower megapixels, but the quality of photo just seems to be incredible. So that's what I will go for, and that's what I'm going to be using moving forward. There will be videos still on the R7 coming out, so please subscribe if you want to see more content on the R7, because they will be coming through. But yeah, in the comments let me know which one you went for, which one you're going to go for, and why as well, because it's always good to see why people go for what they go for. And I will catch you guys in the next one. So please subscribe and see you later on. Goodbye.